Welcome to Footy Talks. Footy Talks. Footy Talks, your Thursday footy fix. Luke, Stephen and KJ with you as always. And today,
for me, it would be great to come back to Toronto. Even if I can come back as a player, it will be great because I will love it.
They're moving back to Toronto and they want to move back into the house. So within the next month and a half, I think I got to find a new house.
I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe because I sleep a little bit on the plane.
But as soon as I looked up and saw the trajectory, I knew it was a goal. And then from that moment on, I kind of I lose my mind a little bit and don't know what to do. So I ran to the bench.
Welcome along to Footy Talks, presented by Powerade. We are heading towards the MLS Cup playoffs, and over the course of the next few weeks, we will get you set for the Major League Soccer postseason. Luke, Stephen, and KJ with you, usually on a Thursday lunchtime at 12:30 Eastern Time, of course. But we were a little bit preoccupied yesterday, boys, weren't we, with the action on TSN, with the Euro qualifiers, the playoff finals, and Stevie, I was expecting some kind of background track, Flower of Scotland, whatever it was, to accompany your appearance on the show today. What a day for your boys.
Yeah, absolutely incredible moment for Scottish football. It's been a long time coming. It's been very heavily publicised. It's been 22 years since we made a major tournament. It's going to be 23, but we're going to be there and we're going to be at home. We're going to be playing some games at Hampden and then a massive one at Wembley against the old rivals, the old enemy in England. So, it couldn't be any better, could it, KJ? The whole story, the way that it went, the drama, the penalties, the usual Scottish, mishap with the last-minute goal, just getting us going. And it almost always ends in, amazing failure. But this time, we managed to get it done, and credit to every one of the guys that wore that shirt.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Pleasure to sit next to you yesterday and go through those range of emotions I felt for you at some point. And then obviously, as I've said before on this show and to you, Scotland are probably the world champions at spectacular failure. So when they did it again yesterday in the 90th minute, I just looked at you and we're like, here we go again. The inevitable doom just started to surround it. And then, they pulled through it. And, for me, I was just delighted that they won because they deserved to win. That was the other thing. It was like, the Serbian team had so many talented players, Milinkovic, Savic, Tadic, so we can go through it. And Milinkovic, there's so many players that I felt again let themselves down. Maybe Kolarov's presence being injured was a big factor to it, but they crumbled. They crumbled on the night physically and certainly crumbled mentally. And Scotland had everything that they didn't. And at that point, they had unity, they had togetherness, they had belief, they had talent, and they showed it all. And they deserved to win the game. It was a pleasure. And now we get to look forward to what will be, I think, 25 years and 3 days since the last time they met in the Euros, with Gascoigne scoring the goal and the celebration with the dentist chair with the water bottle. So, so be looking forward to the summer, boys. It should be a day that we'll be marking on our calendar pretty quickly.
I particularly enjoyed watching SportsCenter last night. They'd had a camera on you throughout the day, Stevie.
Did they air it?
You didn't know about. Yeah, they did. They aired reaction after Scotland scored and after the penalty win as well. And I know on Twitter, but they put it out on the TSN Soccer Twitter account, that video as well. And last time I checked, it was over 40,000. It's the most popular thing that we've ever put on the TSN Soccer Twitter account. Just goes to show you what a popular guy Stevie is, I think. Ivan wants to know if you're coming out of retirement for the Euros.
No, I've got a perfect back three in McTominay, Gallagher and Tierney. Not needed.
Perfect. It's perfect, is it?
Perfect. Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much.
I'll remind you of that on June, whatever day it is at Wembley.
Harry Kane, it'll be okay. I read the tweet today. It was brilliant. It said, Harry Maguire, get ready. Lyndon Dykes is coming to beat you up. Dykes up top for Scotland. What a performance he put in. He is a physical striker. So there will be challenges. Southgate spoke glowingly actually about Scotland and the improvements that they've made and the challenges that they'll bring. So we're heading towards a mouth-watering game.
Stevie looks pretty fresh this afternoon, though, I have to say. I was a little concerned, but he looks really good.
I did go out last night, guys, as I know you would probably imagine, but I kept it kind of sensible. I was glad that I got kicked at the bar at 11 and there's not any, scope to go to 1 or 2 in the morning. So that was good. But I went to my favourite Scottish bar, the Caledonian, at college in Ossington, and spent some time with my good mates, a couple of Scottish guys, Brian and Stuart, and then we had a couple of Scousers, which almost counts as Scots as well. We kind of bring them into our reckoning, Craig and Paul. So it was a brilliant night with a few whiskies, a few beers. We dissected every bit of the game and enjoyed it.
We should say now, by the way, that originally Stevie wasn't going to be able to be on the show this week because he's a very important man with a lot of important things. So he does have to duck out a little later on. We've got a couple of great guests coming your way, including Jeff Agus, who is a longtime MLS player, now administrator, and also Ralph Priso, who really looking forward to talking to Ralph, of course, 18-year-old teenage midfielder who recently made his debut for TFC. But I think we just decided that even 20 minutes or 15 minutes of Stevie is better than no Stevie at all, especially after what happened yesterday with Scotland. But there was a little concern about whether you would be still doing it from, the downstairs basement of some pub or wherever it was that you finally ended the night last night.
Yeah, we got some great pictures. The bar that we go to, like I said, is a Scottish bar, and they have this big St Andrew's Saltire on the patio wall, and we got some great pictures against that. And we had fun last night, as I'm sure most of Scotland did. Some of the videos I've seen, Edinburgh, a guy standing on a kind of ledge out his apartment, playing the bagpipes of Flower of Scotland, everyone's singing along from the windows. Amazing. This is what it's about, isn't it? These moments that bring a nation together. We saw it in North Macedonia as well, Hungary with their late win. It's just fantastic all over Europe. There's winners and losers, unfortunately, but the winners really get to enjoy it, and that's what it's about, KG.
That's what the greatness of international sport provides. It still has, for me, I look at it a little bit like two train tracks. It still has the gauntlet of all emotions that sport bring, the ups, the downs, the heartache, the thrills. But on the other track, it brings the pride and the collective togetherness that you can duplicate at a club level, and the best teams have done that, and some club teams will do that. But this, for me, was something that you can't. This is when you look at Canada and where we are right now. This is what you hope for them, because they're getting that with the women's team, and they've had those moments with the women's team. And here we are in a week where we've lost Tony Waiters, the great coach, and Godspeed Tony, and thoughts and prayers to his family this week, the coach that took Canada to the only time they've taken them to the World Cup. We can only hope as a nation that they can get close to those feelings pretty soon. And we know 2022 is a possibility. We know 2026 is a realistic chance to have those moments. And that's about culture and developing the game in this country. So, yeah, it's exciting, no question about it. But it's that thing that the international sport can provide tactically, the way the game's played and coached, the race is run. The club game has overtaken it. It's the best game of football in the club game. Tactically, the things are slower developing in the international game. It's never going to catch them up, but they'll never have that in the club game, what you can get when you put that jersey on and you listen to that anthem and you represent your country. And then you have moments like that. It's unique, it's special, it's very powerful.
I have to say, I thought about Canada a lot last night, guys. I was very proud to be Scottish, and I always will be. But as you both know, I've had the pleasure of working with the Canadian men's national team, and it means a lot to me to be selected, to be asked by John Herdman, and to be involved in it. And incidentally, I got great texts from Simon Eadie, John Herdman, and Jason DeVos, all the fellow coaches within the Canadian setup. But it makes you think, when it's us, how special it's going to be for this country. And I really did think about that many times last night. Think, well, it's great being a fan and being a national of that nation, but when you're involved in the setup, there's nothing better, and it's going to be just as great when we get to 2022.
You're more than a fan, though, Stevie, and that's why, you pulled on that jersey. You represented that country as well. So that is something that now you've done for Scotland, and you've done for Canada as an assistant coach as well, your new adopted country. Will Dunn asks the question, if Canada ever plays Scotland while you're on the coaching staff for Canada, who are you wanting to win?
Canada, no question. KJ knows me well enough to understand whoever I'm representing, Burkina Faso, New Zealand, I don't care. I want them to beat anybody I'm playing against. So there's no question that I would want Scotland to lose that one heavily.
Interesting, we draw the parallels about thinking about Canada and what a moment like we saw for North Macedonia or for Scotland can do for, and you talked about it, Stevie, the lost generation of, or not lost generation, but the kids who have not seen that country in a major tournament. And in Scotland, it used to be a regular thing. It used to be a regular occurrence during the late 80s, the 90s, that you would expect them to be at those tournaments and qualifying. And then, of course, this gap from the 98 World Cup in France all the way to now. But there in Scotland, the game is still in the blood. The game is still being played all over the place. It's still the number one sport. Here it's not, right? Here we hope for that big moment to be able to take soccer to that next stratosphere in terms of getting people who aren't soccer fans involved and getting them into the game. So why is it so important, say, for Scotland, for the growth of the game, even though it is still a huge game in Scotland and is still the number one sport that every little boy or girl growing up there is playing?
It's because it allows you to dream bigger, and it allows you to open your eyes and not just think small. You know, maybe I'll make it to being a professional, or maybe I'll play in the SPFL or some form of Scottish football. You start to dream, well, I too can play in a World Cup stage or a European Championships, or I can get 50 caps, 100 caps. Maybe I can beat Kenny Dalglish's record of 102. It just opens everyone's horizons and allows them to think bigger. And when you get to these tournaments as well, I said it yesterday, it's not about the money, of course, when you see the reaction of me and many others. It's about the passion of pulling on that shirt. But the money helps the infrastructure of the generation of talent, really. You know, these schools that were started in Scotland, I mean, great. Gilmore came through it. The Chelsea midfielder has done really well. We have these sports schools, regional schools around that allow them to train every single day and still get their schoolwork in from an early age. So there's more investment that can go into that. So it's just a number of these things that really just help grow the game and give you that vision, isn't it, KJ? It's just that's something to just strive towards. You see these guys celebrating on that park. You know, who can't want that now? Who can't think, what's it like to be in that change room, to go through that emotion with my fellow countrymen, my mates, and my whole nation behind me? I mean, their phones must have been blowing up. My phone was blowing up. I've not played the game for 5 or 6 years. These guys must have been getting thousands of texts and messages through their social feeds and their cell phone. Yeah,
great points. Obviously, the money is so important. The other thing too for me is it legitimizes, if it ever needed to be, their league structure. You know, because they have fallen behind significantly over the last few years with the influx of money, drowning leagues like this in some regards. And how do you survive? And it's a remarkable achievement that those people are continuing to survive where they are. But there was players on that field yesterday. I'm not going to name all of them, but Christie, Gallagher, Jack, they're playing in that league, playing at a high level and controlling the game against players playing consistently UEFA Champions League minutes. And so they say, okay, now you're playing at a high level in that environment. You can play there as well. Suddenly the league should stand up a little bit more and say, yeah, we are playing at a top level here. And people can laugh because Celtic got knocked out in the Champions League playoffs and didn't make it this year and all of that. Those kind of things are separate. It's about what are you doing every week there to legitimize that league and the standard that you're playing there. And that's the same here. Major League Soccer, same thing in the Canadian Premier League, is how do you raise the standard of that? And when you go up against other teams and other leagues and other countries, that's how you judge yourself. And that's what they'll do now. They'll go back to those clubs, feeling like they're 8 foot tall, and they should, because that's what they did on that bigger stage for their country, and that's what international sport can bring.
Certainly whets your appetite for the Euros and what's going to come next year, Stevie, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, like I said, there's 2 home games and then there's a game against England at Wembley. It's like the dream scenario for Scotland and their fans. And, not trying to look too far ahead, I'm sure we'll have about 1,000 shows to preview these games. But, I do think Scotland can do well. I actually think that, they can get the results needed. We know that some third-place teams will qualify. So I do think they might be able to get to a knockout stage of a major tournament for the first time in their history. But let's enjoy this. And one thing I want to add, guys, is that, I don't know a lot of these young men very well or at all, but, they look like they're so together. But what I do know is the assistant coach, John Carver. I've known him since I was 12. I went to Newcastle. He was the youth team coach at Newcastle. He then became first team coach as I broke into the first team. He was, of course, Toronto FC head coach for a few years, and he was here in Toronto. And we've kept in touch for, 28 years. So, I'm really close to JC. I was texting him before the game. And Steve Clark was my first assistant coach at Newcastle under Ruud Gullit. So I've known Steve since I was 19, 20. So I really feel proud of the guys and happy for them, the way that they've grabbed these young men together and having them believing in one goal, buying into one way of playing, and understanding that there's more. They have more in them. They don't just need to sit back. We didn't just sit back against Serbia. We took the game to them. Yeah, there wasn't loads of chances. We're still, going to be a team that are never going to create loads of moments, but there was enough there in that performance against Champions League players, like KJ said, to say that we can compete with anybody on this stage and show our uniqueness and win games, basically.
Well, when you've got players like Ollie McBurney of Sheffield United able to step up and take a penalty like that, it was never in doubt.
Hey, don't underestimate that, by the way. It's a nation that's never taken a penalty shootout, has gone back-to-back penalty shootouts to get to the Euros and didn't miss one. And by the way, never looked like missing one. Not one. It wasn't one that rolled under a goalie's sleeve or one that just got a bit lucky or hit the bar and went in. Every one of them to the point. And you guys know what I think about shootouts and what I study sometimes. That everything they did was perfect. Everything that they did. The position of it, where they went, the order they took it in. Yes, they got a little bit of luck winning the coin toss twice. That helped. Everybody needs luck in sports. But Stevie, that was immaculate the way that they went up. And they picked the two guys to replace the two guys that weren't on there. McBurney was the one who went fourth. And then there you go again. The guy steps up again. McLean, number 5. The last time it was to win it. This time it was a massive one to make sure they could stay in it. And they won it because of him again.
Yeah, 2 things for me. Lee Griffiths taking that first penalty. The issues that he's had through injury, through mental health. He's had these problems, Lee Griffiths. He's not really been involved in the Scotland fold for years and years. Comes on that game as substitute and steps up and takes that first penalty. When you win that toss, as KJ always tells us, how vitally important it is, you must score that first penalty. If you miss that first penalty, all that advantage is gone immediately. You score that first penalty, you're off to the races. What a moment, stepped up, great dead ball striker, put it away. And the other guy that I want to highlight here is David Marshall, a guy that I've actually won Scotland caps with. And he's a fella who's been in that setup since, I don't know, I'm going to guess the year, but probably 15 years, 2005, something like that, 2006. And he's been behind McGregor and Craig Gordon, Alan McGregor, Craig Gordon for most of that time. He's had 2 outstanding goalies ahead of him. He's kept coming back. He's kept putting his name there. He's kept being available. He's now become our number 1. He deserves it. He's been brilliant. He's been so consistent. His saving extra time was vital. Yeah. And he has the last touch of a Scotland player to get them to the major tournament. So happy for Marcia. He's a brilliant big guy. The players were singing his name last night in the hotel. I was almost in tears. It was very emotional because he's so humble. He's just sitting there. He's almost embarrassed that he's the star. He's just that kind of fella. And I really enjoyed that moment for David Marshall.
Just waiting for Jeff Agus to arrive. We'll be with him very soon. No, you've got to run, Stevie, in a few moments' time. But just before you do, MLS Awards, Jim Curtin, MLS Coach of the Year. I need you for some help on this one because KJ, as we saw in the show last week, voted for Oscar Pareja. Hold on. Jim Curtin wins the Supporters' Shield.
You're making it out as if I put Jim Curtin 15th on my ballot. He was second.
He likes Jim Curtin. Look, I'm going to stick up for KJ here. He really likes Jim Curtin, and I love his shout.
Just not enough to put him first.
Look, it's a hard one because when you think about the jobs that they both did, and Jim's had the consistency a few years to build that up, and he got my vote. I think he's been brilliant. But you could argue, and I'm going to stick up for KJ, that the distance that Orlando team has come in this year under Oscar Pareja is far greater than the distance that Jim Curtin's took Philadelphia Union. So when you assess it as Coach of the Year, Pareja is a really great shout. He has changed the mindset of an entire franchise, a losing franchise that had nothing going for it, into a attractive team, a team that played great football with some genuine superstars, guys that can change games, and a game plan and a way of playing. Success. Playoffs is going to be harder for them. It's their first time. I think they might get a bit unstuck there, but what a job he's done.
But you voted for Curtin.
Drop the mic.
Because I love Jim. There you go. I like Jim better than Oscar.
There's a 1 o'clock Eastern Time conference call for Stevie with Steve Clark and John Carver as they discuss how they're going to dismantle England at Wembley next June. So enjoy it, Stevie.
Thanks, guys. Sorry I'm leaving. Have a great show without me.
Great job, mate.
We will. Still waiting for our first guest, Jeff Agus, to join us from Major League Soccer. Also to come a little later on in the show, it's Ralph Priso from Toronto FC. I know you're not a huge fan of individual awards, KJ, and I don't always vote for them either. It depends. I need to feel that I've seen enough of all the different players throughout the regular season. I think from a TFC perspective, from Alejandro Pozuelo's perspective, he's probably the favorite for the MLS MVP race here. But there are some decent shouts as well from the other players that were nominated, including the player that got my vote for goalkeeper of the year, Andre Blake, who isn't too far away from that MVP conversation, except for the fact that nobody ever gives a goalkeeper an MVP award.
No, and maybe that's, again, the fact that he's been nominated suggests just how good he's been, because obviously he's going to get his own award. We expect him to get Goalkeeper of the Year award. He's been obviously shortlisted as being one of the top 5 vote getters for MLS. That's how this works. So we expect him to win that. I, like you, don't think he will win MVP, but it's a tremendous credit to him. I'll say this about goalkeepers, and a very underrated storyline for me is that, it's not a common, it's not rocket science. It's obvious, but there's very few teams ever in MLS that perform well in the playoffs without a good goalkeeper. And they've struggled as well, by the way, Philadelphia with Blake. Blake came on as a big number 1 draft pick and a big prospect, had a couple of down years. They stuck with him. He's worked on his athleticism a bit better. And goalkeepers obviously take some time to mature at that level as well. He's been absolutely tremendous. And so, he deserves his shout. As for the other ones, I, like you, voted for Pozuelo. I expect him to win it as well. I do think that this feels a little bit like not quite the overwhelming majority of the United States media talking about Giovinco in 2015, because I think we have to be honest here. We are here in Canada, and there's a bit of a bias is a strong word, but I do think there's a lot more people focusing on the US teams, and it's hard for Canadian teams to have an MLS MVP. I really believe that. But speaking to people across the league, MLS media members who watched it very, very closely, and even more importantly, even head coaches who, when they plan to play against Toronto FC, the admiration and respect they have for Alejandro Pozuelo is off the charts. And so for me, I think that will help him win it. The stats say everything about, whatever you say about the awarding of assists in the league. The 19 goal contributions is important. But I also think there's so much more. As I've said so many times, the true measure of greatness is what you do with the teammates around you and how he makes teammates around you. We wouldn't be having a conversation about Richie Larea's tremendous season if it wasn't for Pozuelo playing in this team for me, because he has elevated the space that Larea can go forward. Not to take anything away from the Canadian. He's done a great job himself. But that's just one example for me of why I think he will win MVP and will be a very worthy winner, Luke.
It's Footy Talks Live, presented by Powerade, and still to come, we'll be joined by Toronto FC midfielder Ralph Priso a little later on in the show as we get you set for the MLS Cup playoffs, which start next week. Every game will be live across Canada on TSN. Fascinated now, though, to be joined by someone who knows Major League Soccer inside and out, has done so for 25 years as both a player and now an administrator. The Senior Vice President of Competition at Major League Soccer is Jeff Agus. He was also a player with the league for a long, long time, 5-time MLS Cup winner, one of the players up for the vote for the greatest players of all time, top 25.
As he
should be in Major League Soccer. We could go through your resume, World Cups, all this sort of stuff. We don't have enough time for everything that you've achieved, Jeff, over the course of 25 years, but appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Lots that we can get to in terms of your role now as the Senior Vice President of Competition with Major League Soccer. But I just wanted to start with this. We sat at TSN back in February, and people from the league came to visit to talk us through all the plans of what was going to be this grand celebration of 25 years of Major League Soccer. And at that point, no one could ever have expected how this would play out in terms of this 25th year for the league. As someone who has been around from day one to this time now, how have you thought this year has gone in terms of what it could have been and what it has been, and what in a very difficult circumstance you've been able to achieve still with Major League Soccer this year?
Yeah, thanks, Luke and Christian, for having me on. It's great to be on with you guys. When we put our business plan together in 2019 for this season, this wasn't part of it. We certainly didn't plan on COVID or the testing or MLS's back tournament. I think in spite of the challenges we faced and really a humanitarian challenge across the board in both of our countries, we've seen it as a really successful endeavor. We've essentially had 3 different competitions. We had we call the pre-COVID games. We had 2 matches prior to the tournament. Obviously, a few weeks transpired between those 2 games and then the MLS's back tournament. And then we're one of the first leagues in the world to put on a successful tournament. And I think that spoke really to the preparation and the plans that we put into effect for that tournament. Coming off of that, then into August and relaunching the league, hoping to play as many games as we possibly could have, and really playing for most teams 23 games out of a 34 game schedule, I think just speaks to the amount of work that not only people in the league, but importantly people at the club played, specifically our chief medical officers, our medical staffs, our coaches, our chief soccer officers did an absolutely fantastic job of making sure that player safety and wellness were their priority.
Jeff, thanks again for coming on the show. I wanted to ask you, obviously, some people forget that the season may have been over if it wasn't COVID. The MLS Cup was supposed to be over in November. Here we are now excited about the playoffs. But you mentioned there about the 23 regular season games. I always thought that was a crucial number, not necessarily because it's 23, but it sounds like a significant reference point of body of work, doesn't it? Rather than getting to maybe 15 or 16 and having an extended playoff. How crucial was that in the leagues determining to get to at least this point and pushing the playoffs to this point? And why do you think that was crucial?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if we had a goal of a certain number of games. We wanted to play as many games as we possibly could, obviously understanding that there's an issue in terms of the physical nature of it. Playing too often would create too many injuries, and so we had to try to identify a balance. We created, a data and sports science subcommittee that provided information. And look, we looked at this from an evidence-based perspective. Part of that was in play when we spoke to ownership about how many games we play. Part of the broadcasting piece was also going to be important when making the final decision. But ultimately, we just felt like we could get in at least these 23 games in total and get as close to the 34 games as possible. We didn't expect to be here in November at this time where we are, but we're incredibly happy that in our 25th season we can celebrate in this way, and we're really looking forward to the beginning of the playoffs.
Was there ever a point when you thought, how are we going to do this? This might not be possible. I mean, the whole world was in complete turmoil through this sort of April, May time. I remember Commissioner Garber at one point when they were announcing the MLS's back tournament saying, things had changed so quickly within the course of a few weeks. When you sit there faced with this, I mean, you've achieved so much on the field as well as what you're now doing in your career off it. But this must have been one of those challenges that you're not prepared for. You can't possibly prepare for sitting there in April thinking, how do we, 1, keep everybody safe, and 2, have some kind of a season this year?
Yeah, it was an enormous challenge. And I think we even look today and kind of wonder what's going to happen tomorrow and how do we overcome these different issues that are coming forward. We're seeing such an increase in the number of cases across the United States, and uptick also in Canada as well. And it really, as I said before, it's no longer a medical issue; it's a humanitarian issue. We've in the news they talk about these doctors who come across Doctors Without Borders, and when they go to third world countries, they're coming to the United States now because of the number of cases that are here, and so we're seeing that mirroring in our club setting and making sure that clubs are doing everything they possibly can to keep players and staff safe. Really creating an environment with testing, with quarantining, with doing everything they can to limit transmission and spread. But it's literally a 24-hour cycle. Every single day there is something different to overcome, and I really take my hat off to our medical department who really stood strong. Our senior executives who have created the ability to go into these tournaments and relaunch the season. And as I said before, importantly, our clubs have really followed everything we said to the letter of, to a T, and have really been great partners in making sure that we prioritize player health.
Jeff, you mentioned the clubs there. Obviously, our job is to cover the league, and we take a lot of pleasure with that. But the majority of our work is to cover the 3 Canadian teams. And when they've been interviewing them this year, They've been doing all their interviews on location from a different place, their new home, so to speak. And, words like perseverance and sacrifice have come up many times from the likes of Mark Dos Santos, Greg Vanney, and Thierry Henry and their players. What is it your take and the league's take on what the sacrifice that the Canadian teams have got to go through this year to be able to uproot and go to a different place and make the best of a new home?
It's a good point. The Canadian teams have actually had an extra obstacle that no other teams have had and have to overcome this travel component, testing component. They've had to move to a surrogate city, all three, one in Portland, one in New Jersey, and one in Connecticut. That in and of itself is such a challenge to just think through in terms of how they would create, now two different environments to make sure that they keep players safe. So I give all three clubs just an incredible amount of respect to be able to do that and be really willing and great partners in terms of doing that. It hasn't been easy. I know, when you go away with the national team at these January camps, it's very much like those types of camps where you're just away from your family, your friends, everything that's sort of normal in this type of normal and routine. And those are all different now when you have to spend that kind of time away from all the people that you love and want to be around. And that's a real challenge. And I think they've done just an incredible job of overcoming those challenges.
One of the issues in terms of pushing the playoffs back a little bit, and now with the international players being away this week and having to come back in and quarantine afterwards, is that some of the players, big players from some teams, won't be available for the first few days of the playoffs as they kick off. Jim Curtin was saying that, yesterday, I think it was, that he hopes still there's some way for him to get his international players back in and available in time for the first game. Are there still discussions ongoing, or is this just really a case of, although you'd love to have everyone back, you have to do what you think is best in the medical advice in terms of your league being able to pull off these playoffs without any kind of major issues like we saw in terms of the USL final getting cancelled?
Yeah, look, ultimately, science and our infectious disease experts will guide us through this, and their position, both on the MLS side, the MLS Players Association side, has been very adamant and very aligned in terms of the amount of quarantine for people coming back and returning and integrating into the first team to try to mitigate spread. And this also, unfortunately, includes players coming back in from international travel. In saying that, while we have this quarantine period, we are still trying to do everything we can to reduce or potentially eliminate it. I don't see it being eliminated, but potentially reducing those number of days. Our goal is to make sure our clubs have the best players that they can put on the field for these playoff games in the safest way possible. And if we can combine those two pieces, I think that's the goal. So we are still having discussions with the infectious disease experts. We're still looking at the science and the data from not only our sport, but the NFL and other major sports, the NHL, try to understand what transmission looks like, to try to understand the infectious time, incubation time, CT thresholds, a lot of different issues that I probably would not be speaking about today had this not happened. So, we've become sort of mini experts in the medical piece. And I never thought coming from a playing background, I would have this type of background, but it's really been an interesting challenge. We will try to make every effort we can to have the best players we can on the field for all of our playoffs.
Jeff, last one from me. I want to take you a little bit away from the pandemic and talk about your relationship with the referees, because I know how that has just been, I think, a tremendous success story. I know a lot of the headlines are sometimes about the one thing that didn't go right, but there's so many things that you guys get right. And for me, with a lot of other leagues going around the world right now, they're really struggling with VAR and a lot of the controversies. And I think MLS is a true worldwide leader in that. I'd like you maybe to talk a little bit about that with our viewers. And before I do, I just share with them one of my memories of you as we did a playoff game many years ago where there was a massive big storyline in developing the game, a controversial moment, and then one of the head coaches, I think, was still talking to you in the galleyway of the stadium about 90 minutes after the final whistle. And I've always had a lot of time for your patience because I've always thought, wow, that man's got a tough job.
Come on, KJ. KJ, name the game and the coach.
No, I'm not doing that to Jeff because or the coach. But let's just say that Jeff, I'm sure, has taken many calls and many conversations.
Were we in Texas?
Well, we were in Texas, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jeff, I mean, I know it's tough just to talk to some of our viewers when there's a big controversy call, even like Nani last week. What's that like? What's that process like, and with the relationship between the league and the teams and pro?
Yeah, no, it's really important. It's a really good point. In some ways, my title isn't really head of the competition, medical, and operations departments. It's head of consumer complaints sometimes. So, my Monday and Tuesday are sometimes spent with GMs and coaches, and they look at it in a way which is informational. They want to understand why a decision was made a certain way, and part of it's educational, because the closer we can get this alignment between where the league is, where our clubs are, and where pro is, if we're all sitting within this one framework, we're going to have a much better experience, and I'm going to have a much better experience on a Monday or Tuesday. I will say, though, pro has been one of the best things we've done in terms of the league office. Peter Walton was the first custodian of pro, and he reminds me all the time that the only team that loses every game are the officials. So he's right in a lot of ways. And Howard Webb, who has taken on the general manager position, has done a fantastic job of really serving that role and moving the group forward. We come from in terms of video review itself, we come from a different culture where our fans understand video review. They understand it in hockey. They understand it in football, American football. They understand it in baseball. It's part of what we do, and I think that's probably why it's so more accepted here in Canada and the United States, where it is a little bit harder to accept in Europe or possibly South America. So I think we've got a great advantage there. But I also think we've got a better process, or a good process, and we get to the right decisions almost all of the time. And I think when we look at it, VAR, while it has some warts and bumps along the way, I'd prefer to have VAR there every day of the week and Tuesday than not have it at all. Every time we have a meeting with pro, we meet with them once a week to discuss all of the games and the performances of the officials. We talk about the number of times that VAR really came in and made the right decision. Now, it's not that way all the time, and we want to make sure we improve that piece of it. But VAR has been a real big success, not only for us, but I think how the rest of the world sees us. And I think we've created a lot of leverage. I think we're well respected around the rest of the world because of what we've been able to do with video review.
Enjoy your comment there about being head of consumer complaints, because we got a window into what that is like when we were really fortunate to have Howard Webb join us on the panel for our coverage of the 2018 FIFA World Cup here in Canada on TSN. And I'll never forget him coming into the green room on the Sunday morning after a full slate of Major League Soccer games on the Saturday night, ready to do this day of World Cup action with us on TV. And he slumped in the chair and he said, you never believe how many messages or calls I've got on my phone since 10 o'clock last night when all the games finished, with all of these different GMs and managers, coaches lobbying for what happened in those games.
Half of those are probably from me too, going, what's going on here? Why are we making this decision? So half of them are from me and half of them are probably from the club. But I'll say Howard's done such an impressive job. He is always in the middle of the storm, and he leans into the storm. He doesn't shy away from it. He's very honest about his opinion. He wants to understand, where the league needs to go, but obviously in terms of the laws of the game, and he walks that very, very fine line. I think he's been one of the big pluses we've had here over the last 4 or 5 years in terms of the video review piece of it, but just our game, holistically. I think he's been such a big advantage.
Agreed.
Just finally, Jeff, I want to take you back onto your playing days, because we talked about it being the 25th celebration, 25th year celebration of the league, and the greatest 25 players being named. And one of the difficulties I had when going through all of those names, because we're honored to, obviously, as media, get a vote for that and for the MLS end of season awards. I moved over from Canada from England in 2006 at the very start of Toronto FC. So I've got a great knowledge of the league over the last more than a decade, 15 years now. But going back to those early days, the times when you were winning MLS Cups with DC United, the internet doesn't have an awful lot of stuff from back then. So a lot of people will be new fans, especially in Canada right here, to Major League Soccer since those days. Tell us a little bit about, just to finish with, what it was like getting started with Major League Soccer, and also maybe the 5 MLS Cups you won, 2 World Cups you went to as well. Is there one standout moment from your career that you look back on and say that was number one?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I'll say thank God there was no social media or very good video in my day. It would have probably put me down lower on the top 25. But look, I am so fortunate to have been around so many good people and so many good organizations, and I think the success I had is really a mirroring effect of what they've been able to do. DC United was, one of the formidable teams in the early days of the league, and then moving over to San Jose and creating something really special for a number of years, with a number of people. There have been a lot of successes on the field, but I'll say the thing I probably take out of it the most are the relationships, those moments in the locker room, those shared experiences we have with one another that nobody really gets to see or understand. I love the fact that I was able to play at a high level in 2 World Cups, in 5 championships, and a number of finals for CONCACAF, Inter-America, which doesn't exist anymore. But there were so many special moments, but the ones I just value the most are those ones with my teammates, my coaches, front office staff, because those are the ones that I think about now. I can always be reminded of the ones on video, and this year I've been reminded of quite a lot, including I think the goal in which I saved MLS, where I allowed Eric Winaldo to go through my legs and score a goal at the end of the first game. So I see that as a really just a holistic part of getting the league going. But we had a lot of people who did that. It wasn't obviously just myself. There were a lot of people who came back and paid their dues and really moved this league into a place where you see today, which is unrecognizable from where we were, in 1996. And while we've had to deal with these challenges in 2020, we should also look back and be really proud of where we've been and what we've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think it's really important when this league continues to grow that the spotlight is shone on things that happened in the first 25 years, and the league has done a great job of trying to do that over the course of the last 12 months or so, as they've been highlighting this 25th year celebration. So do you turn up at Audi Field now and think, wow, this isn't quite RFK? there are no raccoons. It's not.
Where's the rats?
There's a lot of history at RFK that I miss. It was bittersweet when they moved, but it's such a better place for them to play. I do it from time to time, see a rat or a raccoon, and it was part of the deal. I love playing at RFK because of the sound and the fans and what it meant and the history that's there. But it's up to DC now to create that history and that effect at one of the best stadiums that we have in the league at Audi Field, and I'm sure they'll be doing that in a few years.
Thanks for your time, Jeff. Really appreciate the insight you brought to us today on Footy Talks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Jeff Agus, MLS legend and Senior Vice President of Competition with the league. And I cannot begin to think about everything that they've had to go through this year in terms of just getting the season up and running. We've heard from people like Ali Curtis, the general manager of TFC, the president, Bill Manning, and Greg Vanney as well, from a team perspective. But dealing with the whole league is incredible to piece everything together in this moment.
Yeah, no question about it. He's a really impressive guy, Jeff. And the league's in a great hands when you've got people like that running major departments, and there's fires going on every week. And, he's not engulfing the flames and turning them into bonfires. He's putting them out every week in his calm way. And, that's, I think, is really important. It's important that the way that you said there as well, Luke, in terms of not forgetting the roots of the game and the roots of the league. And he was a significant part of the roots of the league. And now here he is, as he gets to say what it's become. And he undoubtedly will say how much better it is now than it was when he played, as he said there. And it's springing and the roots gone. And obviously now here we go with the wonderful trees and the branches going. And it's great to see it. And Jeff's playing a part of that, and it should, because it's important that you recognize what's happened as well, to allow you to go forward to develop your history.
It's Footy Talks, presented by Powerade, the MLS Cup Playoffs edition, and thrilled now to be joined by one of Toronto FC's latest signings, Ralph Priso, who made his debut just a couple of weeks ago. 18 years of age, having come through the academy there. Ralph, it's great to see you. Thanks for being on the show this week here on Footy Talks.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
First off, so much we can get to, Ralph, but I want to ask about what it's been like this week for you guys after all that time having to be away and training in Hartford to finally be able to be back in Toronto and to be back able to train, obviously in this modified quarantine, back in more familiar surroundings.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been kind of weird even to be at home. I just come into the training ground because we've been away for so long. So just kind of having our stuff, kind of how we're used to having it, having our change room, having just the facility, the kitchen, the food back is all good.
Hopefully we still have you there, Ralph. How's it been for you this season with the way that things have gone on? Obviously, you have come from somewhere where you were given your contract, you were signed, and then you're obviously looking to get your minutes. Greg Vanney was talking about how high he rated you before you even played, which I'm sure must have felt wonderful for you. And then you got the chance to get minutes. Then you got the chance to start games. How's this season been like for you?
Yeah, it's been kind of an up and down year. The TFC2 season got canceled, so I didn't really know what I was gonna do to get games this year. I didn't play before I got in for the Philly game, so I was just training. I was doing pretty well, and then I got the opportunity, and I think I did well. And now it's just a matter of just training well and then fighting for more minutes.
I know that you were training a little bit with the first team earlier on in the season, and then, of course, they went to Orlando. When you get back from Orlando and Greg Vanney wants you to be involved and wants you to be part of the traveling party and going down to Hartford and being part of the first team, what did that feel like when you knew that was the next step along towards getting the contract and being able to make the debut?
I'd say it was. I wouldn't say it was a surprise, but I would say it was kind of quick. I think kind of going from training and just being a TI in the environment, just kind of getting a taste to being thrown into a game straight away was kind of a pretty big jump. I think it was a little bit, quick, but I wouldn't say I'd say it was fine. It wasn't overwhelming or anything. I think I've adjusted to the step pretty well, and now I just want to keep going. Just keep going faster and faster, obviously, but I just want to keep moving forward and just improving.
Ralph, everybody we speak to, both talking about you as a young man and a player, are very impressed with you. Maybe you can share with our viewers of the TFC fans from all around the world what it was like growing up in Canada with your love for the sport. When did you start loving the sport? When did you think about it could be something that you could do professionally? And what were those? Who were those heroes? What were those teams and games that you grew up watching when you were younger that influenced you?
Yeah, so I started playing soccer at 3. I started at a club called Clearly Westview. Moved to North Toronto Soccer Club at, I think, 10, 11. And then from there, we were playing against TFC Academy and OPDL. So I was kind of playing against them there a little bit. And then I came into TFC at 14. And then in my first kind of 2-3 months at the club, I thought that this could be something I could do as a job. I didn't really want anything else, really, because I don't really like anything else. So those first years, just at the club, I took stuff. I thought that if I just kind of fix up my training habits, fix up the way I kind of dedicate myself, that it could be something that I do, because I'm pretty good at it. But obviously, I just need to take that next step in my mentality. And I think over the past kind of year, 2 years, I've had. And I think kind of teams I grew up watching, I'm an Arsenal fan, so kind of
sorry about that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad now. But I kind of grew up watching Ozil a lot, Cazorla, and then I really like watching the French league, so I really like the Mota, Verratti, and Rabiot. Those are kind of guys that I watched a lot.
Awesome.
What was your first Toronto FC memory? Did you used to go to games at all?
Sorry.
Your first TFC memory, did you used to go to games at all as you were growing up?
Yeah, I didn't really go to games before I joined TFC. I joined TFC. The earliest memory I have is when Jovinko scored 2 free kicks at BMO. I don't remember the team it was against, but I remember that game.
Did they win? I think he scored 2 free kicks one game against Orlando.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, when you think about where this club has come from to where you are now, you mentioned Javinko, and you're able to pull on the same jersey that some of these players pulled on who were able to get this club to MLS Cup in 2017. Must give you a lot of pride, not only representing yourself, but this team and this town as well that you've grown up in.
Yeah, it's great. I think playing at home in front of just family, friends, and kind of just old teammates that you grew up with in the academy, I think everyone wants to make that jump from the academy to the first team. And I think as kind of take it in and kind of just enjoy it and appreciate it a little bit more, because we've kind of grown up and had to go through all the steps and kind of just go step by step, and then finally getting to the first team. It still doesn't really feel like I'm a first team player, but just being in the environment and training with the first team, playing with them, just being around them is great. And it's something that you it's an accumulation of hard work for years. So it's obviously great.
Well, you are a member of the first team. You played significant minutes and played a massive part already in this season. So congratulations for that. When you're around true professionals who've been in the game a long time, Omar Gonzalez, Michael Bradley, now Jonathan Osorio, Lawrence Seymour, many of those TFC players are there. I just named a handful of them. What are you learning from them when you watch them on a daily basis?
I think you take things like just body positioning and just being clean technically, but I think for me the biggest thing is just the intensity and mentality and training. Right, we trained today, and it was really like everyone was really focused. Guys are being demanding of each other. Guys are getting on each other. Guys are making sure that everything's done just like the game, and I think that's the biggest difference in me in the first team, because I think obviously in the academy we train well, we're all good players, but I think just that accountability and just making sure that everything is done well is just a different level, and it's good. Make sure that I'm focused for the whole session.
Just want to ask you about Canada as well. The first time we got the chance to really see you playing in full games was when we did the Under-17 World Cup last year on TSN. And you're there in that first game playing for Canada in Brasilia against Brazil. When you're standing out there on the pitch there in that sort of an environment against the home nation in a Youth World Cup like that, with the eyes of the world on you, what was going through your mind, Ralph, at that point? And how good an experience was the whole tournament?
Yeah, I think the best moment from that game was when we were just in line during the games. I was kind of just in the stadium, seeing a packed stadium, seeing my parents in the crowd, seeing my mom, seeing our Jaden's parents, Jason Russell Rowe's parents, just guys that we've grown up with together, and just kind of being in that moment. And just kind of watching us in a big game like that against really the biggest footballing nation in the world was just kind of surreal. And it was crazy to just kind of take and just kind of look around and just kind of be in awe a little bit just before the game, where then you have to focus up and then kind of just get to business. So it was great. It was an amazing experience. Obviously, we didn't do as well as I thought we could have, but I think that I've learned from for sure.
Last one for me, Ralph. You mentioned it there a little bit, but maybe just take us into the last couple of days with the training. Obviously, it's a while till you play. There's a big gap there, but it sounds like already the team is gearing up to be the mentality at the very, very top, heading into a playoff run that you hope can take you all the way to a trophy.
Sorry, the connection's not the greatest. I didn't really hear that.
That's okay. No problem. You can hear me now. I just want to ask you if you can just share with the TFC fans the spirit in the camp over the last couple of days. It sounds like, as you mentioned, that it was an intense training, and even though there's a lot of days off still till that next game that you play, it sounds like that you could play tomorrow if you needed to, and you're ready to go to win another trophy.
Yeah, I think everyone on the team is really focused up now, because it's playoff time. Everyone's kind of just making sure that there's no room for error. Everything's just 100%. And I think everyone's in kind of that mentality now that we know that it's do or die every game, every moment, every action of the game. Everyone's just kind of focused to just fight for MLS Cup, which is for me is great because it's where I can kind of just learn really how to win and what it takes to win, and just learn winning habits.
Last question before we let you go, Ralph. Number 97. Is there any reason for that, or was that just the number that you somehow were given here by TFC?
Yeah, I came up from the academy to USL. That was the number I was given, and then coming up from USL to the first team, really all the my preferred number taken. So I thought as well just keep it and something a little bit different. So maybe it'll just help me. People just kind of connect. So I thought, why not?
Perfect. Thanks. We really appreciate you being with us today, Ralph Priso. All the best for the next few weeks. Congratulations on what you've achieved. And it's going to be an exciting time through the playoffs. Your first postseason, of course, as a pro player with an MLS team. So best of luck for what's to come.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ralph.
Ralph Priso with us on Footy Talks here. And one of the things that has been key for Greg Vanney over the last few weeks has been trying to get players like Ralph, like Jaden Nelson, some games. Not always the easiest thing when you have a very deep squad. And that's something we've actually talked about in the past, KJ, about how even with Greg Vanney, when he was on the show, it's a difficult balancing act between win now, be successful, but also be a club that wants to make sure there is a pathway there for younger players. And especially if they're talented younger players or midfielders who are trying to get past the likes of a Bradley or an Osorio or a Delgado or even a Pozuelo if you're playing a little further forward. It's quite a balancing act that a club has to do, isn't it?
Of course it is. I mean, we're talking about professional sports where the outcome of games are, ultimately how people are evaluated. But I do think that in modern day MLS, forget 2020, it's a very different year, that I think that balancing act isn't quite as tight a tightrope as some of the other leagues around the world. And some of those other leagues around the world are still able to do it. So I think it's something that we need to do more of. And I think that young players need to be given an opportunity. Young players, if they come through that kind of environment, are often, as you can hear from Ralph already, they're not just coming from nothing. They're already talking like a professional player before they've even signed it. They're in professional environments for a longer time. They just need opportunities to play. And I think we can give them that. I think in a modern day MLS season with 34 games where, okay, you want to win games, but ultimately developing players is crucial. And if you can develop players that can be massive players in your club going forward, that is it. That is a key component of how you're going to create a winning environment. Not only because then you can produce your own players going forward, you don't have to spend money and scout and a lot of other areas. But also as it brings the pathway forward for younger players in that academy to go, yeah, I want to be the next Jaden Nelson. I want to be the next Ralph Priso. I want to be the next Iowa Canola. And if you don't have that pathway, then it just because you might as well just close the shop down. So I think it's really important. And TFC needs to start doing that more. And I think they've done that here. It's a great opportunity for them. And as these players have shown, particularly that young man we just spoke to, when he's been given a chance, boy, oh boy, is he definitely taking it. He has not looked out of place at all. Both as a starter and as a man who come off the bench and make an impact. I love his left foot. He brings tremendous balance to midfield. And you can see he's a very professional and impressive young man already.
Yeah, I remember when I started in this broadcast business back home in England when I was, 16, 17 years old and feeling so intimidated in terms of getting sent to go and interview players who were mid-20s or 30s or even managers who were older than that. And it just makes me feel very, very old, the fact that now I'm talking to players who are less than half my age.
I know.
It's Ralph coming on age 18. But what he's able to achieve and what the other players who've been brought through with the academy into the first team this year have been able to achieve is very positive for TFC moving forward. It's got to be a little while until TFC find out who they'll be playing in the first round of the playoffs, which is going to be the Tuesday night. So a week on Tuesday, TFC play. They'll find out next Friday who it is that they'll be playing, because that's when the play-in round takes place in the MLS Cup playoffs. It's going to be Montreal Impact at New England Revolution. It's Miami and Nashville, the two expansion sides, KJ. TFC cannot face New England Revolution because, they cannot face Miami because they're the lowest seed. They would go if they get through and play against Philadelphia Union.
Yeah.
So out of the 3 teams that they can face, Nashville, New England, and Montreal, I know Montreal would be the tastiest, of course, but is there one you think that is the best matchup from a TFC perspective in terms of getting through?
Wow, it's a really good question. I'd probably say Nashville, because I think if Nashville win that playoff game, that's a real, they'll be on a high anyway. And then I think, for me, they're very difficult to break down. They're defensively very organized. They don't pose a tremendous attacking threat. They are, Gary Smith's got them defending very deep, and they're very organized. The back four has played so many minutes together this season, the most continuity amongst any back four in MLS this season for a reason. That's why you've seen how good they've been. Zimmerman's up for Defender of the Year because of a lot of help around him as well. Lovitz, the former TFC man, has been tremendous as well.
Scored a great goal last week.
A great goal, great goal in a fantastic thriller of a match in Orlando. So I think probably them, only because New England, as much as they are a familiar team with TFC, and they won't be overawed by anybody. They won't be intimidated by playing anybody. But they've got Carlos Hill back now. They've got Buxa. They've got Bo. They've got game breakers in that team. And I'm not sure they wouldn't fear Montreal, but I just don't think that storyline, soap opera, that narrative that we would love. I don't think they need that right now. I don't think they would want to bother with playing Montreal right now at that point. So, a team like Nashville, they're a little bit unfamiliar with both ways. I think would be a good matchup for Toronto.
It's Footy Talks presented by Powerade, and throughout this playoffs, in each show, we will have the Powerade power play of the game, and we'll have something from the MLS Cup playoffs, whether it's TFC or another team. We talked a little bit about Montreal Impact. They only made it into the postseason in the final day of the campaign, and for a long while, KJ haven't been in the best of form, and we wondered if we would get a second Canadian team to join TFC in the playoffs, but they managed to go to DC United on the final day and get that victory. So Victor Wanyama's goal in that game at Audi Field is our Powerade power play of the game. So here it is. And this was when Montreal were trailing at this point, 73 minutes into the game. I remember saying on the TFC broadcast, there's all sorts of things were going on across the Eastern Conference on a dramatic decision day. That at this moment in time, Montreal were going to be done. They would not be making the postseason.
Right.
As it was, they came to win this game. But Victor Wanyama's goal is a big reason why they're in the postseason with a chance of even going on to maybe play TFC.
Yeah, tremendous corner by Kyoto, puts it away exactly where you want to put it as a header, and then Wanyama delivers his biggest goal since he's become a Montreal Impact, just his second goal. Remember, his other goal was also a header against TFC at the back post from a set piece as well. But you could see what it meant to them. Yes, to paint the picture, and we were in studio doing it as well as you were commenting on the TFC, all things were going on. For the first time all season long, Montreal Impact dropped below the playoff line. First time all season long during this game. And there they are, 17 minutes away from being knocked out of the game of the season, having suffered all they'd suffered, all that over 100 days in a hotel this year, and not having to go home. They stayed back and didn't go home like the other teams did to give them more preparation for that game. And there they were 2-1 behind against the team that was going to overtake them. And what they needed to do there was get that goal. That goal actually only put them at 2-2. The winning goal of 3-2 put them in ninth. To move them from 10th to 9th as well. The 2-2 goal put them 10th. And massive moment. A big Powerade moment for us and a big power header from Victor Wanyama, because it was a time when he needed to step up and they delivered. And here we go. We've got a chance for them to go on a run and maybe even play TFC in the playoffs, which would be pretty special.
And that's the difference between finishing 9th and 10th. If they'd been in that 10th place, they would not have had the opportunity to face TFC, at least in the first game anyway, on that Tuesday. But Montreal at New England Revolution kicks off the MLS Cup playoffs next Friday. Every game will be live on TSN. Unfortunately, from a Montreal perspective, they won't have Samuel Piette and likely not Victor Wanyama as well, who's away on international duty. Jeff Agus did leave a little window open in terms of what they're trying to do to try and get some of the players back. I don't want to misrepresent the quote, but it did seem as if there are still talks ongoing. He said they wanted to have their best players available if possible, but obviously health and safety has to be first and foremost as they're moving in to these playoffs here. It is the MLS Cup playoffs coming next week on TSN, and we'll be setting you up for it with Footy Talks next Thursday at 12:30 Eastern time, when hopefully If you did join the show late, by the way, Caldwell was here for the first 20 minutes or so. He had prior commitments because we had to move the show to the Friday this week, so he couldn't stay for the whole thing. But the celebrations, I think, will be continuing long into the week from Scotland's advance through to the Euros. So maybe they'll just be about dying down by next Thursday's show, KJ.
Yeah, he may have had a prior engagement, or he may have had a tough night where we gave him half a show to work on. That's all. So just leave it up. We'll leave it up for interpretation.
You can make your own mind up.
Exactly.
Thanks for watching wherever you are around the world. Great to have everyone with us. We'll see you again. There'll be an MLS Cup playoff preview show on TSN next Wednesday as we get you set for the whole playoffs, and then Footy Talks next Thursday, 12:30.
Thanks, everyone. Be safe.